Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton. It's time to talk a little recruiting. And Jerry, before we get into specific recruits, this is coming out on a Sunday. So at 11:59 p.m. tonight, the dead period ceases to exist. It comes to an end. We're in the quiet period. You can go to ontexasfootball.com where Jerry's got all of this laid out. But Jerry, in short, this is setting up for a couple of really big visit weekends over the next few weeks for this staff.
Yeah, so the dead period ends tonight at midnight, as you said. And what that means is prospects can go visit schools and have face-to-face contact with coaches and members of the Texas staff or whatever college staff. So you'll start to see kids showing up on the college campuses. Now, Texas will have some kids trickle through, but there's two dates to really remember, March 29th and April 12th. And talking to prospects, those are the 2 days that it sounds like Texas is really making a push to get a lot of kids on campus around the spring practice. So March 29th, April 12th, those are the dates. Obviously, then you have the spring evaluation period, the contact period, as they call it. That begins April 15th and runs through May 25th or 24th. What that is you have so many days your staff can be out on the road evaluating prospects. So the Texas staff will get out and after spring practice concludes, and they'll go evaluate, see all the top 2026 targets, probably still evaluate a few more 2026 guys, and then also 2027, 2028 kids, work on getting those kids to camps, probably make a few new offers in 27, but those are that's kind of the window we're entering in before the madness of the June official visits is this spring recruiting period, and it begins with the dead period being lifted at 11:59 tonight.
Jerry, one more thing before we get into talking about specific recruits. We've seen Sark and this staff since they've been at Texas. They've played the long game when it comes to recruiting decisions, but you've talked about it. A lot of guys are already setting up their June official visits, more June official visitors than we've seen. Is this staff going to maybe have to take a couple more early commitments than they otherwise might want to?
They might. That's a possibility, and we're going to get into the side of the ball I think it would be on, the offensive side, but I do think so. It's kind of crazy. I mean, Georgia's getting close to 50 official visitors locked in right now. Texas is at 36 public, I believe. I think it's probably closer to 39, 40 kids just will announce when they want to announce. But I think there was 41 official visitors last year in June. I think they're going to go past that. But to your point, it won't shock me. Normally when that happens for Texas too is when it's a big offensive line class.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of those guys. It wouldn't shock me if Texas had 2 or 3 offensive line commitments prior to June official visits this year. That would not surprise me at all. I think after that, it's a bunch of battle royale guys.
Well, Jerry, let's get to the offensive line. They've got one in the boat right now with Max Wright of Melissa committed in-state. And we've talked a lot about the in-state group, but anytime we talk about offensive linemen or you talk about offensive linemen, you mentioned 2 guys on opposite ends of the country that maybe people need to be paying more attention to when it comes to Texas. Sam Utu out of California, Samuel Roseboro out of the state of Florida. Jerry, how are things looking with both those guys right now as we get into the quiet period?
I'll start with Roseboro because he's an interesting – there's been an interesting development in his recruitment over the last few months. His mom was relocated to Austin with her job. He stayed at Clearwater with his friends, the kids he grew up with, to play high school football. That means he's a frequent visitor in Austin. His mother's living in Austin. That also means Texas has better than a puncher's chance at one of the top offensive tackles and offensive line prospects in America. He's I believe he's a top 50 level kid in the country. But Samuel Rosenborough, and he'll be on campus June 20th for an official visit. He's been to Texas twice. Obviously, he's been to Austin more than that to see his mom. But I think Texas is sitting in a pretty good spot for Samuel Rosenborough, which is one of the top line prospects in the country. Then on the other coast, as you mentioned, the guy who's not mentioned enough as far as being associated with Texas and where Texas may stand is Sam Utu at Orange Lutheran in Orange, California. There's a connection in his circle with Texas, with prior recruited somebody, a current player at Texas. But Sam Utu's a guy that, look, Texas has a legitimate shot here at him. And if you haven't seen Sam Utu, he hadn't put out a junior huddle video as of last week, but you can find his volleyball tape at 6'5", 285, spiking the volleyball, playing volleyball. Obviously, a lot of kids play in California. So he is a volleyball player / offensive lineman and one of the top prospects in the country on the offensive line. And I think Texas probably is in the driver's seat for both of them, but we'll see what happens. with Utu, but with Rosenborough, Texas has a really good connection there.
Jerry, I've heard this mentioned with Samuel Rosenborough. I've heard it mentioned with a couple of guys, and I think we heard it with Kelvin Banks up until he measured at the combine, which I think his measurements are going to end a lot of the silly discussion. Do we at large, we get caught up in whether, okay, maybe he has a kick inside the guard? Do we get too caught up in that and just instead of just if you're taking 5, just take the 5 best?
Yeah, I think, look, John Turntine's the poster child for this in this cycle, Jeff. People are starting to move him down in the rankings because he's 6'3.5", 6'3 5/8, and they're all going to look bad. And they're all going to look bad because the guy's a great football player. And I don't care what his height is compared to the average tackle height in the NFL Combine. It's not going to matter with this guy. John Turntine's a tremendous football player. So he's getting dinged for it already. And I do. I think so. Look, I mean, because some people have Samuel Rosenborough listed as an IOL, interior offensive lineman. That guy can play tackle in college. John Turntine's a tackle in college. So, no, it definitely is getting mentioned too much. And that's one of the great things about having Tony Hills with us, Hump Day with Hills on Wednesdays. I've got him to break down those guys for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. And, no-brainer tackles for him. John Turntine, Samuel Rosenborough, obviously Cody Green, Felix Ojo, 2 other ones. But, I think we make way too much of it.
Yeah, Roseburow's my guy of the out-of-state guys, and maybe the in-state guys. Roseburow's the guys that I've got a man crush on. Jerry, a guy that's easy to have a man crush on when we talk about prospects. Mark Bowman, the big-time tight end out of the state of California. Ever since he came onto the scene, Texas has been mentioned prominently in that recruitment. Early on, it looked like maybe it might be Texas and Georgia. You mentioned, hey, maybe it's Texas and Oregon. But, Jerry, no matter how you slice it, Texas has been the one constant we've talked about in Mark Bowman's recruitment.
Yeah, obviously his father has connections to the Austin area, spent a lot of time in Austin, family members somewhere in the state of Texas. Look, when the day before his reclass became public, I was told it would be Texas and Georgia as the final 2. Now, I do think Oregon's in it, obviously. I think those 3 are way out in front. But Texas went out to see him this spring. I think there's been really good conversations. I'm not saying Texas is going to absolutely win it, but Texas has a lot of things going for them in terms of scheme, quarterback room, connections to the modern day in SoCal, the Bowman's connections in the city of Austin. So there's a lot for Texas fans. There's a lot of reason for optimism, but optimism doesn't always equal the commitment. It's a battle for the number 1 tight end in the country, but Texas is right there in that battle. Some might even say quietly they're the leader, or it's 50-50 shot. We'll see on that after the visits, but I think Texas is going to have as good a shot as anybody at the end of the day for Mark Bowman.
When we talk about wide receivers, Jerry, I think we forget Chris Stewart's been committed to Texas for a minute now. When you talk about the in-state guys, but we talk about the out-of-state guys, when we start looking at the elite times that Texas wide receivers have put up at the combine the last few years, it seems like anytime we talk about Chris Jackson targeting wide receivers, especially the out-of-state guys, whether you talk about Tristan Keys, Naeem Burrows, we're talking about guys with elite level speed. So, Jerry, when you look at those out-of-state guys specifically, what does that look like right now? Chris Jackson's got he's put a lot of lines in for wide receivers, and he might be getting a couple of bites.
He's got 6 official visitors right now, and we'll see what happens if Tristan Keys visits in April 12th. If he does, I'm not saying it's locked in. Or if he makes an unofficial this spring, does he then officially visit Texas? He's out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, as good a receiver as there is in the country. But let's look at Naeem Burrows out of the Bowles School in Jacksonville. Oh, same hometown as Jamie French. Texas signed the first guy I remember, Jeff, out of Jacksonville for Texas is Jamie French, and definitely one of the most highly ranked prospects out of the state of Florida Texas has ever signed. But getting him out of Jacksonville, getting into Jacksonville, because he is a very popular kid. Naeem Burrows, look, he is fast. He is going to run in the 10.5s, 10.6s, low 10.6s this spring on the track. I think he went 10.75 in his first meet, the warm-up meet. But he's going to push that number down as the track season moves along. But he's got real speed, and that speed translates to football. And we've seen what football translatable speed is with Matthew Golden now, right? I mean, he's faster than you think at the NFL Combine. I think Texas, Florida, and Clemson are going to battle it out for Naeem Burrows. He's going to visit USC as well. But I think Chris Jackson's is getting Texas in a position there. The interesting thing with Burrows, he's scheduled an official visit. He's never been to campus before. He is scheduled or supposed to come out this spring. Again, Jamie French had never been on campus till last spring. Then he officially visits Texas. Then Texas is able to, has the ability to win the recruitment, which they did. We'll see if it goes that direction with Naeem Burrows. The competition's a little different now because Florida's starting the trajectory up. Before, when Jamie French's recruitment, Billy Napier was on the hot seat. So now does Florida have enough to kind of keep Burrows home, or will Texas or Clemson beat them out? We'll see. Then there's Aaron Gregory's very interesting out of Douglas, Georgia, Douglas County, Douglasville, Georgia, I should say. One of the top receivers in the country, 6'3", about 170, great ball skills, very much in the mold of some of the two guys Texas signed in the last class. There's differences, but that ability to go win 50-50 balls, great body control, really ability to adjust to the ball in the air. Aaron Gregory's a Texas A&M commitment, has been since during the season. I think A&M's got to fight to hold on to him. I think it's more than Texas that's involved, but getting Gregory on campus, he's scheduled to officially visit as well. Then there's Caden Dixon-White out of Mater Dei, same school as Mark Bowman, who's scheduled to come in. He's been on campus 2 or 3 times previous. So the out-of-state recruiting at wide receiver obviously has taken shape really, really well. Dia Bell will be officially visiting with a couple of those guys. Then as far as the in-states, I mean, Caden Finley. We'll see if Booby Feaster schedules official visit, but Texas loves Caden Finley. That's just and then Chris Stewart in-state, but Texas really loves Caden Finley. And so that's pretty much the breakdown of the wide receivers. It'll be interesting to see if an A&M could get Aaron Gregory to cancel a visit. They'll try to. We'll see that. I don't think that'll work. But with Naeem Burrows, I think he's continued to move up Texas board. The more they've watched him, Chris Jackson was through in January and had the in-home visit with him and his family. He's a guy that's been ascending on the board since early in the 24 season. And I think that's going to continue. I think he's going to end up being a top 3 receiver on the board for Texas, top 3 or 4 for sure.
Jerry, you bring up an interesting point because we see this a lot of time with in-state kids, where if a kid's committed to A&M or committed to Texas and he wants to visit the other school, with in-state kids, it's typically pretty easy to shut that down. Yeah. Maybe not the case, and probably not the case with out-of-state kids.
No, especially a kid that's like an Aaron Gregory, who's going to be a nationally recruited prospect. He's going to go to schools other than Texas too. So A&M would have a hard time say, hey, don't go visit Texas. Why not? You scared of Texas? I mean, you're still going to go visit Georgia or Tennessee and places, Florida. I mean, so that's the difference there. And I think if you're A&M, I mean, look, they're recruiting to get a lot of really talented players in the boat, knowing you won't hold on to all of them, but building some momentum in that class and hoping to hold on to a high percentage of them. But I continue to be told by a couple of people I trust in the Southeast that Aaron Gregory recruitment is going to be a real battle. Auburn will be in it as well. So it's tough, like you said, Jeff, for if an in-state school, an A&M or Texas, has a kid committed, and an out-of-state prospect's going to come in and visit your school, it's hard to tell them not to go visit the school down the street that's recruiting them. It's just as hard. It rarely happens.
Yeah. Jerry, it's nice to be sitting here at the start of the quiet period and knowing that the most important position on the field, quarterback, is locked up with Dia Bell. These start classes are nice the way they've unfolded that way. But as far as who's going to be joining him in the backfield in this class, Chad Scott's done a lot of work. He's reached out to a lot of guys, those priority guys, not just doing his recruiting in the state of Florida and throughout the Carolinas, but spot recruiting his running backs, whether it's Javian Osborne, whether it's Derek Cooper, whether it's Xavier Crowell, whoever it is. Jerry, what's it looking like as far as visits go for some of these running backs coming up?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see. This is going to be key. Getting Javian Osborne on campus in March or April to get him to spend some time around Chad Scott. Obviously, I think if Texas makes a big push for KJ Edwards, he visits officially June 6th to 8th. I think Texas is a favorite there. A&M, Oklahoma are in it for sure. Don't get me wrong. Xavier Crowell is very interesting. Arguably may have been a slight Texas lean when Tashard Choice left. Then he got kind of emotional, canceled his visit. Now that visit's back on after one conversation with Chad Scott, which tells you how much he likes Texas, by the way. That's a real battle. That's a June 6th official visit with Georgia the week before, Auburn and Alabama the weeks after. It's going to be really interesting to see who they get on campus in the spring. KJ Edwards will pop it in the spring. Xavier Crowell's been to campus twice already. Would he come a third time before the official visit? I don't know. Derek Cooper at Chaminade Madonna. People continue to tell me he wants to make an unofficial visit. That's kind of like Jamie French, but it's got to happen. He's got all the official visits laid out already. but he's had a conversation or two with Chad Scott. I've heard those have gone well, and Derek Cooper has legitimate interest in Texas. The key is going to be getting him on campus this spring, so then you can shuffle the deck with that June official visit schedule for him. And then, Maury Latimer, he kind of gone quiet recruiting a little bit. It'll be interesting to see, does Amari Latimer still like Texas as much? He did an interview with Tom Lemming, I think it was last weekend when Lemming went through the school, and he still mentioned Texas among his top groups of schools. But to this point, there hasn't been an official visit set up. And so we'll see what happens there. And the other question, Jeff, is that's yet to be determined. Did Chad Scott really like anybody he was recruiting at West Virginia that he may feel like had been under the radar, or he feels like now that he's at Texas he can get in on that he couldn't get in on at West Virginia? Does he bring that guy to Sark? Does that guy become a running back in play? We'll have to see. I venture to say we'll have a name or two added to that running back potential target list coming up this spring.
No doubt. Jerry, before we get out of here, obviously we've known for a while that there wasn't going to be a traditional spring game. It's now since been announced that it's going to be a fan appreciation day. Does the lack of a spring game, I know a lot of people at ontexasfootball.com on our message board and even people on the channel were, hey, no spring game, is that going to hurt recruiting? You feel like the staff's got a pretty good plan in place to combat that, to where you know that's going to be a weekend where it's not going to be maybe as busy as it otherwise was, but it seems like you said, those 2 weekends, March 29th, April 12th, those are going to be really, really big weekends for the staff.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt Texas at all, honestly. Look, Texas is kind of a well-oiled machine in recruiting right now. 4 straight top 5 classes, the first real true number 1 consensus class since 2002 for Texas. Everybody thinks Mac Brown just used to recruit number 1 classes. He didn't. Now, this was the first consensus number 1 since 2002, but Texas has it going right now. They have a well-oiled machine. They're about to have a number of guys drafted again, probably double digits or close to that, drafted again. The culture's really good at Texas. I don't think not having a spring game is going to hurt them in recruiting at all. I think the big piece where Sark really has his eyes towards is the June official visits. That 6th, 13th, and 20th weekend. Yes, they want to get kids on campus this spring. They want to see if they can get in on 4 or 5 other guys, a few defensive linemen. Maybe they've never been to campus before, which we'll talk about next week. But I don't think it's going to hurt them, Jeff. I really don't. I think Texas is a machine right now in recruiting. They're going to sign a 5th straight top 5 class. I can't tell you the makeup of that class, but I do think that's going to happen.
Well, if anything pops up in recruiting, we'll have it here for you on the channel and at ontexasfootball.com. Make sure you like this video, subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel, and get over to ontexasfootball.com. If anything recruiting related pops up, Jerry and CJ Vogel will have it on the site. Promo code OTFOG is what you need over at the site. That'll get you $49.95 for a full year. We got spring recruiting, spring ball. Jerry just mentioned June official visits. After that, we'll have SEC media days leading into camp. And then the fall, you're not going to want to miss any of it. Plus, hey, we don't just cover football either at ontexasfootball.com. Women's basketball playing for an SEC championship on Sunday, baseball, softball, maybe even some not on the court related stuff, Jerry, brewing with men's basketball, given the way things have developed over last week. We'll see what happens there, but we've got it all for you here on the channel and at ontexasfootball.com. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. Until next time, welcome.